introduction to the Korosot Chakra astrology. The first thing that I want to do is I want to give you an idea where the system that I have here, how it came to be, just a little bit. It's kind of a long story in a way, but I do want to give you just at least some introduction to it. I'd always heard about chakras, but I really couldn't find very much information. When I first started trying to study or understand about what chakras were and what role they might have to play in our well-being, the information available, articles, magazines, books, was non-existent, virtually non-existent. And mostly the only way I'd actually heard of them at all was from one of my teachers. Okay, and they really didn't know very much about them. They knew of them. Eventually, I found one book, Chakras by C.W. Ledbetter. Okay, and there was nothing else published. There were no other books published. And so I read that, I absorbed it like a sponge, and then let it go. But over time, the interest didn't go away. I kept, again, hearing references to, and then when I was in Thailand and we were learning about things called prana nadis, and that one of the definitions of what is a prana nadi is it's a conduit of pranic force that unites or communicates between chakras. Or it's the line that the prana travels in communicating to the chakras. But even so, there wasn't much information about the chakras other than they're places where energy flows. And I'd studied acupuncture, so I knew about acupuncture points, and they have kind of a similar thing, but not in the context of this grand hierarchy of chakras that I've later come to understand. So I got the idea that I wanted to, first for me, personally, and then also so it would be a resource for students, that I would endeavor to find everything that ever been published or was available in any published form anywhere in the world, in any country in the world, Europe, Australia, Asia, India, whatever. And I started collecting resources. I started doing book searches. I started going to libraries and looking at microfiche. And I started trying to do that. And eventually I did end up in India going to school. And I had a sidebar research that I was doing the whole time that I was there that was about this chakra thing. And I realized in India that I could actually get access to original manuscripts, and that I could hire people who could read and write Sanskrit, or read and write Gujarat, or read and write Hindi. I could actually hire translators at the libraries. They're at all the libraries. Just go to the library. There's people hanging around, dressed very nicely in slacks and white shirts with their notebooks, and they're like, "You need a translator? You know, we can help you." And I was like, "Yes, I do." And so eventually I collected in original resources from original Vedic manuscripts, some of which I was actually able to collect, actually to buy, over 150 sources. Okay, and then when I got back home, and I kind of sat on it for a while, moved to Chicago. I got to a place where I had enough free time to sort of devote to it. And so what I did was I started going through all my resources, and I made little index cards. And every time there was a mention of a chakra or anything about it, any specific kind of thing, a reference to something in first chakra, a reference to something related to fourth chakra, I put it on an index card. I wrote it down, where it was from, and I put it on an index card. I had to do this by hand. And then there comes a point in time where I decided to put it all together. So in the basement of my house, I took over the whole basement, and with stacks of these little cards. And all the cards that had anything to do with first chakra I put over here. And all the cards that had to do with 7th, I put over here. All the cards had to do with any of the others, but not others, I put in their appropriate piles. So I had like 7 major piles, and then I had all miscellaneous kind of references that did not specify a particular chakra, but reference the chakras, but didn't say it was about 1st or 7th or whatever. But I had about 150 resources that I sorted out. Okay. And then I sat for some period of time and I went through these cards over and over again. And I was trying to get a picture. I was trying to come up with an idea. What was the conversation that was being communicated with this particular information, which I was cherry picking, admittedly, because there weren't any books. So it was always just a verse or just a paragraph, sometimes just a sentence, just one line. And then on to other things. And I was put it all together, everything that I could find. And this took me, I don't know, it took me 2 or 3 years to accumulate all the resources. Because of course back then there was no Google, and there was no way to generically. I spent time in National Library in Thailand. I spent time in National Library in India, actually several. I spent time at the National Library in Washington, D.C., etc., trying to get my eyes on these resources so I could copy them. And so eventually I got where I thought I had found everything that I was going to find, pretty much. After about 3 years, I wasn't hopeful that anything new was just going to pop up unless it just popped up. Okay. So I started going through the cards and kind of arranging them in different ways, trying to come up with a story that they were trying to tell. What were they trying to tell? And actually, I kept coming back to there were different things. There wasn't one story. It was different stories. There's a story of the Platonic solids, the role of geometry and classical medicine. That's a story that comes through the chakras. There was a story of sacred songs, literally, sacred songs. Most of these original references from the various Vedas and so on, if you actually look at them in context, they're actually songs. They're actually long poems, and they're actually songs, and they're made to be recited out loud, because for thousands of years, that's how they were communicated. So the syntax of them, the tonality of them, and then I realized, in furtherance of that, for example, the seed syllable or biju for every chakra is a specific tone. And if you take at a specific frequency, a specific octave, and if you take all of the tones that are traditionally allocated to the chakras, well, you have a musical scale. And with a musical scale, you have the possibility of interacting those notes, which then create chords and harmonics. And so you had the basis of a system of music. Right? That's one thing. Another thing that I saw very clearly was that there was a body of teaching about the physical body. Organs and regions and tissues, what are called malas in the body, and things like this. That there was a whole sort of context of the chakras that related just to the physical body. Even individual parts of the body. That there was a conversation about relationship and communication dynamics between parts of the body and how that works. I caught on pretty early to the astrological significance. Every chakra has a ruling planet. Every chakra has a ruling planet. And these planets are not haphazard. They're in an organized system relating to the Jyotish astrology, okay, the classical Indian astrology. And then I saw that you could actually, by knowing a person's astrology, of course I learned that first in Thailand and then in India, that you could actually predict illness. And not only could you predict illness, you could predict seasons and years when certain kinds of physical afflictions would be more dominant than others because of the planetary influence. And over and over and over again, what I was seeing is this kind of rule, as above, so below. And that the chakras are the direct inverse and mirror image of a universe that has three parts: a heaven, celestial influences, and earth, terrestrial influences, and a middle realm, which is called the realm of organic life. And that what the chakras were doing is they were the symbolic representation of a conversation that apparently has been had in every culture that's ever existed on the planet, including the Indian culture, but not exclusive to the Indian culture. Somewhere as I was going through all this information I collected about the chakras, I got the hit that this was true. That this is true. This is not some arbitrary, subjective thing that one individual made up out of some fantasy, or they had some dream. I got it that there was truth in this system, and I had the next thought that I had was, if there's truth in this system, this truth may not be unique to this system, that it might be something that we have always been trying to understand. And there have always been people who did understand it. And if that was true, then I should be able to look at other ancient cultures and find the equivalent of the chakra system, although it might have very different names. For example, instead of calling first chakra, Muladhara, okay, then first chakra might be an animal. First chakra might be a deity, a god or a goddess. Second chakra, instead of being water, Svadhisthana, okay, might be Venus, Aphrodite. And that when I then went and I said, okay, so let's go back as far back as back goes. So the oldest culture that we know of is Sumerian culture, and they had a pantheon of deities that they quote-unquote worshipped. Well, there are 7 primary deities in the Sumerian pantheon: Marduk, Ishtar, Inanna, okay? And if you looked at their roles, responsibilities, areas of influence, periods of heightened activity, periods of sleep, on virtually every point, it correlated with the correlations with the chakras. Virtually on every point. That blew my mind. Okay? Because then I thought, okay, let's move forward. Let's look at the Babylonians. Is there anything like the chakra system in Babylonian mythology and or medicine and or whatever? And again, I found it again. And I also found the correlations to the physical body. I found the psychological correlations. I found the astrological correlations, same planets, working in the sky, same way, same descriptions of how terrestrial influences manifest, how celestial influence, and what is the role of man. So I kept going. I went into Etruscan culture. I went into Chaldean culture. I went into Aramaic culture. I went into Jewish culture. I went into Proto-Christian and early Christian culture. 12 disciples, but not all equal. 12 houses in the zodiac. Characteristic of each disciple actually identifiable as relating to a particular house in the zodiac. Okay? I learned that at 92. Okay? And then I kept going. So I got into the Greeks. I asked the same questions. Is there anything like a system based on this hierarchy between heaven and earth, 3 and 3 plus 1, 3 earth, 3 heaven, 1 man in the middle? And there was. And I went into Roman culture, and there was. everywhere I looked, I started to see that there was something like this system in the traditional cultures in some way, form, or fashion. Some more developed than others, not all equally developed, but some more than others. And as I found these references, well, I started writing them down. I found them in Egyptian culture, exactly. The Egyptians understood this system, whatever this is. We call it Korosot, or Chakra system, or Astrology. Exactly the same. Not just like it, exactly the same. If you got past the icon, you know, in other words, you're looking at an icon of an Egyptian deity versus a Hindu deity. Versus, see, where I got the deity part was straight from the chakras, because classically speaking, all the chakras were, as symbols, were depicted with a ruling deity. All of them. They all have their deity. Okay? And I didn't just accept that. I would ask, why? Why does this chakra have this deity? Or why does this deity have this chakra? It doesn't matter. And then once I got on that train, that's the same question I ask everywhere. Why Venus for second chakra? Why Aphrodite? Why Inanna? Why? What are they trying to depict? And I see a story. I see a common thread. I found a mythology of personal transformation, and each of the chakras being symbolic of a stage of evolution, a possible evolution. That's one thing I found out. I found a system of predication of personality predilections. It's a nice phrase. In other words, a predictor of emotional status. Not a specific emotion, but a milieu of emotion that would change from year to year, all of your life. And that this has always been known. And that in the traditional esoteric schools and priesthoods and so on who taught these things, this was a map to transformation, a map for transformation, and also a predictor that could be used in such a way that if I know 2 years from now that I'm going to have a year of emotional ups and downs, perfect storm emotionally is coming. I'm going to be caught up in it 2 years from now. Well, if I'm a person of knowledge in a place of knowledge with access to knowledge, what am I going to do? I'm going to prepare. I'm going to prepare ahead of the wave, ahead of the affinity, ahead of the alignment, ahead of the correlation between all these worlds coming together at particular points in time and particular points in space. And so I believe that that's how one way that they used this understanding of the chakras. So what I did was I took all those cards and all the new information that I got, I sorted it out, and then I spent about a year trying to figure out how to display it. It wasn't as easy as you think. The poster was not the first choice. Okay. The first choice was the Torah scroll. In other words, each chakra in turn on it. And it came out to be 28 feet long with wooden ends on it. The first prototype, which somebody borrowed, it went away from me. But the first prototype, I actually had wooden ends like a Torah with the round pieces to keep the scroll on. And it was made out of parchment paper. And I would go to a service bureau and have each section printed out, and I would glue them together, and it came out to 28 feet rolled up, a foot wide and 28 feet long, with the illustrations that I was coming up for, you know. And then I thought, wow, this is really cool. Actually, I really liked it. I showed it to a friend of mine who owned an occult bookstore, and he literally like wet his pants right on the spot. He said, "This is awesome." You know, I thought I could put it in a silk cover and have a little tie. So I went to another friend of mine and said, well, she was an artist and was really knowledgeable about production art. And I asked her how much would it cost to make these. she looked at it, and that was Anna and Pilsen, and she looked at it, and she measured it, and she said, I'll get back to you. And a couple of days later, she came back to me, and she said, well, it's going to cost $2,000 to scan. And then it's going to cost $1,000 to make screens, because you have to do a series of silk screens. There's no printer that could print this. Okay? It's before digital printing. Okay? And you're going to have to hire a couple people to put them together as they come out of the press, and get your materials together, and so each one's going to run between $300 and $500 if you do 100 at a time. So then I went to Anna. I go, yeah, okay, let me make sure I understand. Okay. Yeah, okay, what else, is there any other way we could do it? Anything else that we could do that, And so Anna came up with the idea of making a poster. Make everything smaller, you typeset a poster, you can have them mass produce. It's a lot cheaper, okay? And we got the cost down, to $10 per piece. I had 1,000 of them made. Okay. All right. So each poster, what I came up with, bottom line, that's what's in your book, in the Korosot book. Each chakra has 52 correlations. Each correlation, each section, there's a section of correlations. So one first section will have to do with traditional names, actually in Sanskrit, translations of those terms and names and so on. And then the next section will have something to do with something else. It'll be qualities. There's a section that's purely physical parts. The section is just on physical parts. There's a section on music. There are 5 independent sections for each of the different cultures that I found correlations in. The Babylonian, the Sumerian, Babylonian, Roman, Greek, etc. There's a whole section for each of those. There's an aromatherapy section, an herbology section. There's an essential oil section. There's a polarity section. And some of these have more than one column. Okay? Some are just single column, because that's all I found. That's all I could find. So that's what's there. Okay? And then lastly, there's the astrology. Okay? Now, for a long time I tried to put the astrology together, and I was really having a hard time. Because in traditional Western astrology, there's no real direct correlation with the planets of the chakras. I found it, of course, in 2 things. I found it in Thai Korosot astrology, which is a Thai system of Jyotish astrology. It's the way the Thais practice Jyotish. Okay? And then I found it in the Jyotish astrology. And then most recently as just a couple of months ago, I found a Western system where the planetary correlations line up almost bang, 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 bang. That was through Dr. Charles. And I did a course this summer on medical astrology. And it was actually, the course was eclectic in the sense of, it was a synthesis of understandings that have been practiced in the area of medical astrology, including India and China and the West and Jyotish, and coming up to a synthesized kind of understanding of how to do prenatal charts to generate information specific to a person's health, and to be able to actually devise treatment strategies based on that. And for mind, body, and spirit. Okay, and so I found another correlation which I haven't written about yet. That's even recently. So information continues to come. All right. So let's start off with the basics. So the first thing, the basics for Korosot is that there are 7 primary chakras. That's the starting place. 7 primary chakras. Most of you have heard of that. Okay? Each of these 7 chakras has a planet or a planetary body that's associated with it. Okay? So the planetary body that's associated with first chakra is actually Earth, the Earth itself, E-A-R-T-H, Earth and Moon, and sometimes mostly Moon. But we say Earth and Moon. The planetary body that's most closely associated with Svadhisthana chakra is Venus. See, I already gave you that clue. The planetary body that's most closely associated with Manipura, okay, is Mercury. The planetary body that's most closely associated with 4th chakra Anahata is Jupiter. And for 5th chakra, Mars. And for 6th chakra, Saturn. And for 7th chakra, it's the Sun. Okay, so those are the planetary correlations for the 7 chakras. That's very, very important. Okay? And these are traditional. And all the literature and references that I found that are old, that reference to the chakra, almost always they refer to the planet. And sometimes in Vedic literature, there's a reference to the planet, which I know is a reference to the chakra, by the context of the reference to the planet. So if you didn't really understand that correlation, you could read the same passage many times and not get it. That's actually talking about a specific organ in the body, because you wouldn't know what the organ correlation is, for example. Those are all in the poster, those are all in the book, right there, okay? And then another thing is, the chakras are personality types. They're essentially gunas of the doshas. Essentially gunas of the doshas. So we talk about tridosha, and which is really 7. Remember I said there's not really 3 doshas, there's really 7. Okay? Well, we also have sub-characteristics of them, which are the chakra type. So there's a 1st chakra type, a 2nd chakra type, a 3rd chakra type, a 4th chakra. These are body types and or psychological types. Okay? Don't ask me ever to tell you what your type is. Okay? Because I will not do it. I believe that there's no practical benefit whatsoever in somebody else telling you what your type is. I believe that if you want to know what your type is and get the benefits from it, you have to work to deserve it. Work to own it. It only means something if you work. If you can just, somebody just tell you what your type is, they have just denied you a whole part of development that you could have gotten access to if you tried to work it out on your own. And so some of you have had experience with me where you ask me about, well, what's my type? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you. That's not my job. Okay, my job is to tell you there is such a thing, and you might be one, but it's not to say which one. Okay, and type is different from cycle. Type is different from cycle. Okay, now let's talk about cycles, because this is where it gets really cool. All right. One of the first things that I learned, okay, now remember, so we went by the numbers. Each one of these numbers, 1 through 7, is the same as these numbers, 1 through 7. So 1st chakra, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. And also, you know, this would be lunar, right? Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, and Sun. There actually are some other planetary influences that come in, okay? For example, on 7th chakra, we have one of the things that I recently sort of sorted out is the influence of Uranus, for example, comes in at 7th chakra. Uranus comes in at 7th chakra, okay? But I'm not so concerned with that yet. I haven't refined it. So, now same thing across the top. Now here's the way it works. The lesson of the chakras is this. From the time you're born, for the rest of your life, you are moving through a series of 7-year cycles. In conventional classic Western astrology, this is well known. And so, for example, there are different terms for the different 7-year cycles. And the most common one is the 7-year Saturn return. The 7-year Saturn return. Okay, every 7 years, Saturn comes back. But see, keep in mind, Saturn is one of the planets. And if Saturn returns every 7 years, so does every other planet, but at different times. Okay? So there is a 7-year return for every planet in the astrology system. Okay? So we're born, and our first 7-year cycle is ages 1 through 7. Now, one of the differences between the Korosot astrology and conventional Western astrology is we are not concerned with the minute and the latitude, longitude of your birth. Not concerned with the minute of your birth, AM or PM. I'm not concerned with the exact placement, latitude and longitude of your birth that conventional astrology, Western astrology uses. I'm not concerned with that, okay? Because these are global cycles. These are solar system pervasive cycles. And they affect everyone in that time period in a similar way. And then there's personal variation that comes up. All right, so the first 7 years of life, 1 through 7. You with me? Cycle number 1. Second 7-year cycle, age 8 through 14. Got it? Yes? Nod your head. Third, age 15 through 21. Fourth, age 22 to 28. Fifth, 29 to 35. Sixth, 36 to 42. Seventh, 43 to 49. And then something miracle happens. The next 7-year cycle returns. There's your return on cycle back to number 1. And so age 50 to age 56 is the same cycle as age 1 to 7. Same cycle. The only thing that's different is you. The only thing that's different is you. The cycles are, well, they're celestial. They're celestial. They're not dependent on you. This is a clock. This is our solar clock in our solar system. That's one way to think about it, okay? Now, each 7-year cycle is ruled directly by one planet. The whole cycle is ruled by that planet. And then the next cycle is ruled by a different planet. And it's not random, the order. It's not random. Okay, I didn't pick the order. Okay, I just mapped it out. I didn't pick it. Okay. Now, also what's really interesting is we would almost call this a microcosmic solar calendar. Microcosmic solar calendar. Because, of course, we have bigger calendars than 7-year cycles in our solar system. Right? So, for example, it takes the Earth 26,000 years, give or take, to make one complete precession of its axis around the solar system. For the sun to complete one complete rotation of its orbit, 26,000 years. We call that the Great Year. Some people put it closer to 25, some 26 point something. But one way or the other, everybody agrees when they do the math. For our sun, one day in the life of the sun is 26,000 years. One day in the life of the sun. Well, on that scale, we're not so super concerned with that. The sun's day versus the sun's night. Okay? We're not super concerned. We're concerned with the intrasolar bodies that are the organs in Saul's body. you think of the sun as a sentient being. I mean, if you think of anything as a sentient being, you should be open to the possibility that the sun might actually be conscious. That it might actually be a sentient being, if anything is, on any scale, big or small. Well, the sun is not in isolation. The sun has a body, but it's not the flaming body. The sun's body is the shroud of the planets and the asteroid belt, Van Kuiper belt. This is the sun's body. We don't see the sun's body because we have optical distortion based on angle of perception. In other words, because of where we're at, looking from the inside of the body out, and the body is in motion, and we're in motion inside the body, we don't really see the body the way that it is. We have no sense of scale, and the sun appears to be stagnant in the sky, and it's not. The sun itself is traveling through space faster than a bullet. In fact, tens of thousands of times faster than a bullet. The sun itself, to make that 26,000-year orbit, in its orbit, means it itself is traveling fast. Okay? Now, the Earth is spinning. All right? Somebody tell me how fast the Earth is spinning. I'm sure you've heard that.
Is it 26,000?
It's approximately 26,000 miles an hour. Escape velocity for a NASA spacecraft is approximately 17,000 miles per hour. In other words, to get off this planet in any given direction, you have to be going at least 17,000 miles an hour. That's lickety-split, don't you think? That's fast. At 17,000 miles an hour, you achieve perihedron and enter Earth's space, and the Earth looks like it's standing still. It's a limitation of perspective. It's not standing still. You're in motion with it, which gives the illusion of standing still. Now the Earth is whipping around the sun faster than a speedy bullet. So it's spinning faster than my blender on its highest setting by a factor of 10. By a factor of 10. That's how fast the Earth is spinning. And as fast as that, it's moving around the sun. But we can see it because we're in the motion, you know. We're on the moving train, so the train, therefore we can walk back and forth on the train as if it's sitting still. And if I didn't look out the windows and the track was a really good track, I might actually think that I'm not moving, although I might be on a bullet train going 250 miles an hour. Okay? From the outside looking at the train, you might not even be able to count the cars. They look like one long car at 250 miles an hour. Okay? From the outside of our solar system looking in, the Earth doesn't look like a watery marble. Okay? It looks like a band of iridescent blue-green shimmer and casting a veil around the sun with a long tail because the sun's in motion pulling it. The veil's like this behind it. And so we would see the color. Okay? Every planet in its turn doing exactly the same thing. And so the sun is veiled with 7 veils. 7 colored veils. Each one an unbelievably beautiful color. There's not much language to begin to say other than iridescent within its frequency. It's complex frequency because every part of the planet lends, every mineral on the planet, every part of the planet, how much water it has versus iron, lends some shade or hue to the vibrational essence of the frequency of light coming from the planet as it's in motion. Okay? And if we could get the right perspective and we looked at our solar system, it would look more like a sperm than a plate. It'd have a bulbous, bright head It would have an iridescent, shimmery, multicolored, constantly changing value, shroud with 7 layers deep, translucent. And it would have a tail of just 1 billion miles long. A tail of debris and of the ripple from the passage of the Sol system through its space. If we could just see it, okay? The chakras are telling us that we're part of something bigger. That we are fleas on the backside of the camel, walking across the desert, on the continent of Africa, on the planet Earth, in the body of the sun. No. This is part of this idea is the chakras give us another way to see our place in the universe. Like literally, you are here. And it's just like at the mall. If you go to Mall of America or you go to some new giant mall and you don't know where you are in relation to everything else, not only can you not get to anything that you need to get to, you may never find your car again. So your first thing you do when you go to the mall, certainly Mall of the Americas, is you find an information kiosk with a map, and they're in front of every entrance. And they have this big map, and on it has a big X. It says, "You are here." Note to self. You are here. Everything else in the mall is relative to that point. And because now I know where I'm at, and I have a map, I can get to anywhere in the mall and back. Anywhere in the mall and back. It gives me a plotting system that I can use. I know what floor I'm on, I know what wing I'm in, and I know what direction I have to go. See, I have a three points. It gives me 3 different axes. With 3 different points, I can navigate to anywhere in the universe. If I have 3 precise points in relation to where I want to go, and know where I'm starting from. With that much information, I could sail across the biggest ocean on the planet. In fact, that's all ancient mariners had. They had the position of the horizon. They had the degree of inclination of the sun over the horizon, and they had a compass direction, north, south, east, or west. Those 3 things, and a way to measure them, which eventually became the sextant and the compass, the mariner's compass. With those 3 things, I could, and knowing where I'm starting from, very important, okay, I could find any place on the planet and go there if I had a map. Okay, this gives us points of reference and it gives us the possibility of a kind of a map. All right. Now, each 7-year cycle is ruled by a planet. Each 7-year cycle is divided in turn into 7 individual years of influence, also ruled by a planet. So first year is 1-1. So it's the first lunar cycle, okay? The first lunar cycle. And the first year of the lunar cycle is also ruled by moon. And so this is moon squared, or lunar squared, or earth squared. It is earth, earth, earth. Earthy, earthy, earthy. Okay? And then it goes in turns. Second year, which is still in the first cycle of the moon, is ruled by Venus. Third year, first cycle of the moon is ruled by Mercury, and so on and so forth as you go through the first year. So we start at the moon, which is the second brightest object in the sky, in the night sky, second brightest object in the sky. And we end our cycle at the sun, which is the brightest object in the sky. This is a metaphor for we start with less than clear, less than real. Everything about us is reflective of our environment, by and large. And we're utterly and completely dependent on our environment to stay alive and to stay bright. And then we finish this cycle with self-illumination. In other words, it's a metaphor, I believe, for a transformation that occurs between age 1 and age 7. And every year has its hallmark, okay? And then it begins again the next year. So every year then has its own special, unique quality and becomes important in its own right. However, see this diagonal line? Like this? These are the squares. See? 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7. So that's where the 7-year cycle of influence is in harmony, cogent, and in sympathy with the individual year influence. The influence is squared. So for example, if we look at 4-4, which is age 25, what a mess emotionally age 25 is. Okay? Because it's heart squared. Heart squared. Heart on top of heart. Okay? So, now another thing I want to tell you is because we're dealing with planetary influences, the timing of transitions is not precise. In other words, this doesn't shift on the exact day of your birthday. That's why we don't use exact birthdays, because these are global transformations. So, for example, 4-4, which I pointed out over here at age 25, you can start in 4-4 cycle somewhere in the year before or somewhere in the year behind, after. See, it's really a 3-year period that is the significance of the influence. Carryover from the past cycle, preparation for the next cycle, and kind of a bell shape like this. So this would be, in this example, we'd have 24, 25, and 26. And the influences of what we think of as 25 could be some ahead of the curve, some behind the curve. So we don't think of it in precise terms like you would in conventional astrology that's based on the exact time of birth, exact latitude. And exactly at 12:03 on this day, the influence changes. It's not like that. It's organic. It's organic. And it's about fields of influence. And fields of influence don't actually have a beginning and an end. They don't. Fields of influence come into being, peak, and then diminish infinitely. There's no, like for example, if this seeing bowl over here was a field of influence, okay, when I ring it, it never stops ringing, ever. The tone just gets quieter and quieter and quieter. It gets where I can't hear it anymore. But the vibration set in motion, the molecular activity of the molecules in that bowl stimulated when I ring it, continue forever. That there's actually no actual predictable time where the molecules in that bowl will ever stop ringing. And it also makes something kind of interesting if you think about it. That means all previous rings are still there and are overlapping in some way and are affecting the sum of the harmonic that that bowl produces. And, for example, that's why we believe that old bowls are better. Old bowls are better. You might get a new bowl, it's got, oh, it's real bright, clean, kind of ding, kind of just pristine sound. You get an old bowl like this, you hit it, and it growls, and it grumbles, and it rumbles, and sometimes it's feminine, and sometimes it's male, and sometimes it's loud, and sometimes no matter how hard you hit it, it's not going to play. And it's got character. And it's because the sum of all previous actions relating to this bowl are still happening in it, from a physics point of view. Okay? This is kind of following that model, but we're looking at peaks and valleys, all right? Where are we on the time? You good, fine. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and stop.